The classification of warp knitting machines. Warp knitting machines classifications means first of all there are needles and machineries and take up cams and guide bars. First of all we have to classify these. The remembering of classification is very easy. First of all we have to discuss about the needles, and in needles there are a single needle bar, double needle bars, and afterwards type of machines, and the type of machines guide bars, and industrial what are the applications. In this way we have to recognize or remember the classifications. In warp conditioning there are two types of needles. One type of is latch needle and spring weird and compound needles. Okay, in latch needles there are two types of needle bars are there: single needle bar and double needle bar. In spring needle beard and compound needles there are single e needle bar and double needle bar. Same way in latch needles and spring beard and compound needles are same. After that, in the single needle bars there are different types of machineries we have to use, that is radial machine and radial crocket and circular machines. And the double needle bars for carpets and pile after wears only machines will be used. In spring weird needles, single needle bars, the tricot machines and radial machines and flat Milan's machines will be used. And double needle bars in simplex machines only we used. In the needle bars, radial connectivity is used for lace and power nets. Laces means the socks, shoe laces, and power nets means example like mosquito bats. Okay, and in radial it is there are guide bars are used. 14 1 to 8 guide bars and 12 to 42 guide bars, and general purpose also we have used. And single needle bars, 2 guide bars, 3 guide bars, 4 guide bars, 48 guide bars, and out dresser. General purpose 6 bars and covey net and 15 lay. 7 to 8 guard bars, outer wear, industrial wear, and underwear also. In this way we have to remember the warp knitting machines classification. So warp knitting, what is meant by warp knitting? Warp knitting is a method of converting the yarn from the warp beam form into a looped fabric wound on the front of the machine. The yarn is knitted or looped to form loops around the needle, and then loops are intermeshed to form a laminated sheet of the textiles. Okay, first of all we have warp beam knitting is nothing but first of all we have to prepare the warp beam for a looping fabric in front of the machine, like weaving only. The yarn knitted looks very round needles and laminated sheet of the textiles. It is a single bar warp knit machine. Reverse side it is a, and this is the formation of the black shadow of the loop is called as this is underlap. Underlap is nothing but t-shirts technical bags, and this technical face is a t-shirt's front face, and line diagram of the technical face and technical bags. In photos, one of the yarn is showing in black against white yarn on both sides to indicate the path of the yarn from loop to loop. Okay, it will be seen that the face side is made of loops or stitches, while the reverse side is made of diagonal floats called laps. It will be observed that the yarn forms a loop in one wale, advances vertically, and forms a loop at the adjacent wale. Underlap and overlap. In warp knitting, the terms underlap and overlap are used uh, are used are used in the historical background. The warp yarn threaded in the guide is traversed uh, around the needle of the adjacent wales. On the present warp knitting machines, the needles are held upright and needle bar, but earlier, on the original warp knitting frames, the needles were in the horizontal position with their beard face upwards. The guides were shagged over the top of the needles. This movement was therefore called as overlap. The guides were shaked over the top of the needles. This movement was therefore called an overlap. Similarly, the yarn was lapped by the guide under the needle. This movement of the thread was therefore called as underlap. Even today, the same terms are retained though the shagging is now taking place in front and back side of the needle or removed from the hooks. Closed lap or open lap stitches. To form a fabric with a single guide bar, it is necessary to connect individual veils at every course by directing each warp thread to knit on a needle adjacent to the previous one at each course. There are two ways of achieving this result: closed lap and open lap. Closed lap is the technical backside and closed lap. In figure, it can be observed that bold black lines are is called as a technical backside. Base stitches before connecting the other loop. Cross the underlap is in the opposite direction to the overlap shown called as closed lap. In open lap, in figure that bold black lines are the base of stitch before connecting. The other loop does not across goes in the same direction as the overlap. This is called as an open lap. In this figure, there is a very particular closed lap and open lap. The other loops and black lines based on these structures is called as very critical in the uh, warp knitting machines. The underlap and overlap is very essential part of the warp knitting machines. On the present warp knitting machines, the needles are held upright and lowest called as a movement lapped guide under the needles is called as the underlap, and the guides were shagged over the top of the needles. This movement is therefore called as an overlap. Even today, the same terms are retained. The shagging is now to remove the two achievements of closed lap technical face and technical back sides is very essential of the open lap and closed lap. This is about the brief introduction of the